Hey everybody, it's me, Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie. On this episode of CD Junkie, I'm going to be talking about a band that not many people know about, but I've been just praising this band for the last 40-something years, and I think it's time that I should make another video about them. And I figured now is as good a time as any to talk about a great band by the name of 4 out of 5 Doctors. Now, I know you're probably thinking, 4 out of 5 Doctors, who are they? I'm here to tell you about them. But before I go into telling you about the band, I like to tell you how I got into them. And that's basically, it was 1980. I was 16 years old, not yet 17, and flipping through the bins at Licorice Pizza. Now, every time I would flip through the record bins at Licorice Pizza, it was always the miscellaneous sections first. Miscellaneous A, miscellaneous B, etc., etc. And the reason that I would do that is because that's where they would put all the new bands that, they just didn't feel like making a bin card for. So I'm flipping through and I see this album by 4 out of 5 Doctors. And I just glanced at it for a second and it didn't register. I just kept on flipping through and I got to the end of the F section. So I'm pushing the section back. And as I push it back, it's like halfway. And then there's that 4 out of 5 Doctors album again. So I think, okay, well, I'm going to take a look at that. So I pull it out of the bin. And I look at it and, I didn't have any idea what kind of music it would be. And I turned the album over and it said produced by Alan Winstanley. Bingo. Alan Winstanley was part of a great production duo, Clive Langer and Alan Winstanley. And at that point, this is 1980, I think I already had the first 2 Madness albums, and they had produced that. So I didn't think that these guys were going to sound like Madness, but I had no idea what they were going to sound like, but it was produced by Alan Winstanley. I look at the picture, and they're just 4 normal guys. Could they be Pablo Cruz type music? Could they be like the band Shoes? I didn't know, but I took a chance. So I bought that LP, I took it home, and it was wonderful. It is a fantastic debut, an eclectic, quirky debut that's just all over the map musically. You've got new wave, you've got power pop, you've got kind of Steely Dan-ish type jazz, you've got flutes in here, and it's just wonderful. This band is not afraid to try anything. And I was just generally blown away by this because of the fact that, I'm sitting here and, not knowing what to expect, but I'm getting melody and hook after melody and hook. And every melody is surrounded by this quirky, eclectic musical style. And every song was different. And I was just so amazed. I was hooked. And the thing is that I don't think this band would work without these 4 guys. Cal Everett on bass and vocals, Jeff Severson on guitar and vocals, George Pitaway on guitar, Tom Ballou on drums. They experimented so much. They did so many different styles of music that I was just floored by it. And this is 1980. At that point, I sort of classified them, I didn't call them power pop. To me, they sort of fit into that same category as the group Interview or Sniffin' the Tears or Flash in the Pan. These are bands that were obviously just great pop bands, but you couldn't call them new wave. You couldn't call them power pop. You couldn't call them commercial top 40. You couldn't call them AOR. It was just little bits of everything in there. And it was so absolutely such a stunning record. The song Modern Man, which opened the album, in fact, that song is on a recent compilation called Rockets of Love, which you can now get on CD. But there's songs like Jeff, Waiting for a Change, New Wave Girls, Mr. Cool Shoes. This stuff is ingrained into my brain. It's so wonderful. And every mixtape that I made at that point would have a 4 out of 5 Doctor song. And, there were a couple singles at that time. I think there was a single for the song I Want Her, backed with Opus 10. And they were separate on the single, but on the album they're joined together. And but really, almost every song could have been a single. Modern Man, I think, was a single. But so absolutely wonderful. Of course, this is the time, I was listening to 2020 and the records and all this stuff. And to me, these guys were different, but they were also just as wonderful as those melodic bands. I don't put any of these bands above each other because they were all doing something unique, wonderful. And 4 out of 5 Doctors really stood out because the album was just filled with so many different styles. And of course, I was totally bummed, and still to this day, that this band didn't take off. I could have sworn that they would have had at least one minor hit at that point. But it took another 2 years before their second album came out. It was called Second Opinion. And this was a different ball of wax. It sounded like the label said, hey, we know you guys can rock. Let's put out a more cohesive pop rock album, or maybe a sort of a harder rock album. And, let's see how that does. Now, they pulled in producer Jeff Klicksman, who at that point was known for like producing Kansas and bands like that. I guess he was so well known, they actually put him in a picture with the band on the back of the album cover. But I'll tell you, maybe with one or two songs, they're rocking a little bit harder. But 4 to 5 Doctors were smart because they were still coming up with the goods in terms of melodies and hooks. This album, the songs are not as eclectic as the first album, but the songs are just as strong, if not better. Songs like Waiting for Roxanne, Breaking Rocks, The Lonely Ones, Heart on a Chain, just absolutely incredible band. This album was, I guess you can say maybe this was closer to power pop than it was to AOR. But the label, I think, was trying to get them, and sell them to the FM crowd as opposed to the, power pop new wave crowd. And unfortunately, it didn't work either. And I could have sworn there would be songs off this album that were going to be hits. I was wrong 2 times in a row. That was it for the band. They went into the studio and they were recording stuff for a third album. But I believe they got dropped from the label, or maybe they broke up. But it's just so sad because this band had so much potential. This band, they were even in the movie House on Sorority Row. I think that's the movie that they were in, but they're actually playing a party and they do 2 songs. One of the songs is actually Waiting for Roxanne, which is off the second album, but it's a different version. I think they just mimed to the demo version of that song. I remember my brother coming home from the theater. He said, that band, the 4 to 5 Doctors that you like, they were in the movie House on Sorority Row that we just watched. And it's like, but I didn't go see the movie. I think I saw it when it eventually came out on video. But such a great band, I swear. But you're probably sitting there going, Schnee, you're the CD junkie. Why are you talking about 4 to 5 Doctors when it's only available on vinyl and you have showed nothing to us? Well, guess what? But in 2008, a very limited CD came out called Reconstruction. It's actually a double CDR set. Both albums digitally remastered from the actual tapes. This isn't from vinyl. In fact, Waiting for Roxanne actually has the count-in on the CD where it didn't have the count-in on the vinyl. This contains the first album and the second album, and I believe the discs actually might have 1 or 2 bonus tracks on it. But there's the inside of that there. And it's incredible. It sounds amazing. I am so sad that no label has actually decided to put the stuff out on CD, because it still, to this day, sounds wonderful and fresh. And there is the track listing there. Really, absolutely wonderful band. Now, also, the same time that this came out was another treat called Post-Op. It's a 21-track collection featuring all previously unreleased recordings. The first 10 tracks are like demos from, I think, 77 to 81. And it starts out, that quirky new wave stuff that you'd probably find on some, independent 7-inch in a bin, but not a band that you would expect to, have, sign with Nemperor Records and put out a major label release or two. But as the songs progress, by 5 or 6 songs into this disc, that 4 to 5 Doctor sound is solidifying, and they're being a little more serious. They're still a little goofy, but being a little bit more serious. And then the last 10 tracks are what would have been possibly the third album, and it shows them even maturing more and expanding. It's actually sort of a combination of both the first and second albums, because you're hearing some songs that are rocking, heavy guitar, but you're also hearing other songs that could even be classified as AOR or yacht rock, but the hooks are great. And I'm not saying that these 10 tracks would have been the third album, but they were definitely putting songs down, and some of these, or most of these, probably would have made that third album. So there are CDs available, Reconstruction and Post-Op, but both are long out of print. But maybe, you might be able to find them, or maybe some great label out there will say, hey, Schnee was talking about this band, let's put that stuff out. I don't know if it's going to happen. Now, the band did reunite, I think, when these CDs came out. So it's been 10 or 15 years or whatever. But they do occasionally still see each other. About 10 years ago, during a holiday season, they all happened to be in the same town, and they all got together just to hang out, and just be like old time friends. And of course, they knew that I existed, and they sent along an album. It's autographed by all 4 original members right there. So I thank Cal and Tom and George and Jeff for that really absolutely wonderful gift. And I believe that Cal Everett was in another band that put out a CD or two. I've been trying to track those down for years because he's such a great singer-songwriter. They all still play music. And this is a band that I've been in love with for 40-something years. And I'm just dumbfounded why people don't love this band more. But guess what? If you've never heard them, you're going to hear them now, because I put together a medley featuring songs from each of the original albums, plus some songs from post-op. And I hope that you like this. Give this a listen, and I'll see you on the other side. Anyway, that's it. I hope that this inspired you to check out 4 to 5 Doctors, maybe track down the LPs, or maybe petition every label out there and say, release this on CD officially. I mean, when I say official, I mean, this is official, but it's really, I think that more people should have access to this music. It's really wonderful. I appreciate your time. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, to ring that bell for future notifications. And until the next time, remember me. I'm Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie.